Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1271B, and today's date is May 4th, 2017, and the title of the episode is Russia Pushing for De-Escalation Zones in Syria to Shut Down the Deep State. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the corporate media, they are out there, and they, for the last couple of years, have been telling us how great Obamacare is. It's like the best thing since sliced bread. And we've been reporting on Obamacare and how bad it is for the people and how it's imploding on itself. And what we're seeing right now, well, it looks like the last evidence of Obamacare's implosion, and it comes from its stunning collapse in the state of Iowa. And we are starting to see that early last month, two of Iowa's three remaining healthcare providers, Aetna and Walmart, well, they announced they would not participate in the state's exchange in 2018. And on Monday, Walmart said it planned to give up the Iowa Obamacare market in 2018. And this is one of the state's largest insurers. Aetna will not participate in Iowa in the individual public exchange for 2018. And we're starting to see that many insurance companies are backing out of Obamacare right now. Medica also announced that due to instability in the market, they too would likely have to pull out in 2018. And what we're seeing right now is a complete implosion of Obamacare. And if Medicare does back out, they're going to leave about 70,000 Iowans without a single option to purchase personal health insurance in 2018. So Obamacare right now is on the verge of collapse. They're going down right now. And when we look at this, we can see that these insurance companies that insure, anywhere from 70,000 all the way up to 250,000 individuals, people are not going to have any options whatsoever. Now, Trump and Paul Ryan, they were able to get their health care bill through the House right now. Now, Republican senators, they are saying that they don't see a way to get the health care reform over the finish line. They don't see how it's going to pass the Senate at all. And we can see that this new health insurance, by the way, has the same exact acronym initials as Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. It's exactly pretty much the same, which is the American Health Care Act. I mean, this way you can't even tell the difference because there isn't really any. All it is a gigantic rewrite of Obamacare. And yeah, they changed a couple things around here and there. But as we can see, well, it's not going to be a benefit to the people whatsoever. Is this going to pass the Senate? Most likely not, but we'll have to wait and see where this actually goes. And what we're looking at right now is the same exact health bill, which was written by Boehner about 7 years ago with the help of the insurance companies. And then what they did is they rewrote it a little bit, changed a couple of things, added the MacArthur amendment to it, and they're telling us that it's something completely different when it really isn't. What they really need to do is they need to sit down and they really need to say, this is what's going to be a benefit for the people. Now, what's very interesting, any health care bill that actually gets through, it should be a requirement that the government officials, and I'm talking about all those in the Senate, the president, the vice president, Congress, everyone, they have to take this. Because remember, they're telling us this is good for the people. So if it's great for the people, they should drop their health care insurance and they should take on this health care insurance. Because that will prove to the American people, the leaders that we voted for and put them into office, let them lead by example. And guess what? I bet you none of them are going to want it. Just like none of them really wanted Obamacare either. This is why they exempted themselves, because they knew exactly what it was. And they're going to do the same exact thing. Now, it looks like Trump, he is getting prepared and ready to pull the United States out of the Paris Agreement on climate change. And it might come as early as next week, and we'll have to wait and see how this actually moves forward. But something I do want to mention, a couple of reports back, there was a rumor that Jared Kushner and Ivanka, they were trying to force Trump to stay in the Paris Agreement. Now, if he decides not to remove the United States from the Paris Agreement, because remember, when he was out there campaigning, he was telling everyone that, this global warming thing is completely fake, phony, and false, and he was going to remove the United States from the Paris Agreement. If he decides to stay in the Paris Agreement, well, we know for sure that Jared and Ivanka, well, they have his ear, and most likely the deep state is completely controlling him. If he keeps his word and he decides, okay, I told everyone I was removing the United States from the Paris Agreement, this is exactly what I'm going to do, then we have a little bit of hope. And these are all the small little indicators that we're looking at right now. And I'm not saying that he's not part of the deep state. I'm not saying that he's not being controlled, that he's not being blackmailed, or he was always part of the deep state. I'm looking at both sides right now to see where he actually lays, because right now, as we all know, there's a lot of confusion out there. The corporate media is out there confusing everyone. Trump is out there confusing everyone. And we're all looking at the different indicators to see where he really stands. Now, there are certain things where he comes out and says he's going to be breaking up the banks, where he's going to be shutting down the government, where he says, I want peace in North Korea, where I'm not going to be drawing red lines. We do see those type of things, and then we see him flip-flop on others. So we're looking at everything. I don't want to be on one side or the other. I want to see what the indicators and what his actions actually are. Yes, people are saying a lot of things. There's a lot of words being thrown out there, but we need to see exactly what he does and what his action is after that action. And that's what we're looking at. Now, it looks like Trump is going to pick the Army Secretary. And this Army Secretary, which is the Tennessee State Senator Mark Green, he is a former medic and a West Point graduate. And what's so controversial about him is that he views the Second Amendment as completely different than most individuals. Let me explain, and we can hear what he had to say here. Now, during a pro-gun rally, Green said the following: "The Second Amendment, while it allows citizens to protect themselves from other citizens, goes well beyond just allowing us to defend ourselves from a criminal. The men who penned and ratified this document gave us the right to keep and bear arms as an ultimate check and balances against the federal government. When considering magazine size and weapon type, comments like 'you don't need a 10-round magazine to hunt a deer' completely misses the point of the Second Amendment. He believes that the individuals in this country should have the same type of weapons or access to the same type of weapons the military does have." So we can see right now that Trump was giving a speech at the NRA saying that 8 years of chipping away at the Second Amendment is completely over. And his pick for Army Secretary, well, this doesn't work into the fabric of the deep state. See, so we're starting to see many different things happen, and certain indicators and his actions show us that if he's really, really, truly part of the deep state, and again, we're looking at both sides, we know the deep state is completely against individuals having weapons. They don't want the people to have weapons because their ultimate goal is to control the people. And they don't want people having weapons because a population with weapons, very difficult to control. You can only do it up to a point until the people say, you know something, we had enough. And they have weapons to move towards the government and say, back off. So if he's truly with the deep state and he's part of the system, there's no way that he would want the people of America to have a weapon. It just doesn't fit into the framework of the deep state, because we can see through the last 8 years, they wanted to take weapons away from the people. This is their ultimate goal. Take away the weapons, control the people, and have the people do exactly what they want. Now, since Trump was inaugurated, maybe a couple weeks after that, he started to talk about how Obama was spying on him. And of course, the corporate media completely laughed at him, saying that's completely impossible. How dare you? And as more and more information came out, we started to realize that, yes, it looks like he was being spied on. And there were certain individuals that were unmasking different individuals. And this is how they knew what was going on. Well, just lately, there is more data that is coming out, which has been made available this week by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And it provides the clearest evidence to date of how information accidentally collected by the NSA overseas about Americans was subsequently searched and disseminated after Obama loosened privacy protections to make such sharing easier in 2011 in the name of national security. Now, during Obama's final years in office, Obama's team significantly expanded efforts to search National Security Agency's intercepts for information about Americans, distributing thousands of intelligence reports across government with the unredacted names of U.S. residents during the 2016 presidential elections. And what we can see is that by doing this, this is completely illegal. And I know when Trump first came out and said this, the corporate media and many people around the country were scratching their heads, laughing, saying, this just cannot be true. And you know what's very interesting about all of this is that things that we talk about that seem so outrageous, so far-fetched, that no way would our government ever do this. Well, we know that they do, but those people who've been sleeping, they just can't fathom that they would be doing these type of things. And that's why it sounded so ridiculous. But when we look at what has been going on in the last couple of years, we realize that this isn't ridiculous. This is exactly what has been going on. And this is why they've been trying to cover it up. Because if the American people actually realized and they knew, and I'm talking about the majority of the public, what was really happening, there would be a revolution right now, and most likely the American people would want most of the government to step down. And we can see that we will eventually get to that point, because when we have this collapse of the system, the truth is going to hopefully come out, and the American people are going to view what was really going on, and hopefully most of these individuals, which most of them are crooks, most of them are corrupt, they are removed from their position. Now, out in France, we can see that the election is really heating up. It looks like Le Pen, well, she made some type of statement where Macron had some type of offshore bank account. And right now, the French prosecutor is opening a probe into this. And what has been reported so far is that Macron entered into an operating agreement for a limited liability company, LLC, in the Caribbean islands of Nevis, and that the company may have had a business relationship with a bank which has been previously involved in tax evasion cases in the Cayman Islands. And this PDF file that came out shows corporate records of a company named La Providence, LLC, apparently created by Mr. Macron in Nevis, and noted an offshore tax haven. La Providence is the name of his high school in his hometown. So they are looking into this right now, and we'll have to see if this is true or not. But we can see right now this is a major fight, because the elections are coming up in 3 days, and we can see they are neck and neck. Remember, there are no electronic election systems running in France. It's all done by paper and clear boxes right now. There's no internet involved in this. And this is what they're really worried about. And these remarks that Le Pen made, well, this is going to be a big problem with Macron. And we can see the deep state, the central bankers, they're very angry about this. And they don't like what is happening right now, because it's very difficult for them to manipulate this if it's not electronic. Now, if they count the ballots in the back room, then we have a completely different story. Now, Barack Obama, well, he officially endorsed Macron right now. He gave him his blessing, And we can see that the deep state, they are the Rothschild Bank, the central bank, they're all behind him. They want him to win. Now, this is going to be a down and dirty election. I believe it's going to be very, very close. And we're going to have to watch this very carefully on how this turns out. Now, out in North Korea, we can see that there's a lot of propaganda flying back and forth, and the corporate media is really responsible for this because they are pushing a lot of information out there, and they keep using words like North Korea will not beg for China's friendship, and they're making threats to China. And what's very interesting about all of this, it reminds me of when the corporate media was out there pushing the propaganda saying that Russian troops were building on the border of Ukraine, getting ready to invade into Ukraine. And then we had those news reporters that went up and down the border, and they were taking video, and there were no Russian troops whatsoever. When we heard that China was building up their forces of about 150,000 troops on the border of North Korea, which also turned out to be false, fake, phony, and everything else. Russia was building up their troops when actually hundreds of miles away from the border, they were having military drills, and they were actually breaking them down, and they were finished. But they used that to make everyone believe that something was about to happen. We also had that instance where they said that all these aircraft carriers were headed to North Korea for a showdown. And again, we're hearing this propaganda from the corporate media to make us think that North Korea is ready to do something. And Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang stated on Thursday that while China's position on North Korea nuclear program is consistent and clear, it does desire to maintain a good relationship with North Korea. We do not want to push them away. We want to bring them closer. We want to have a friendly relationship. We want to speak about what is happening right now. We want to have a dialogue. And we even hear Lavrov out there saying that as for the nuclear problem of the Korean Peninsula, we are convinced that there is only a political solution. Any attempts to resolve the situation by military means will be completely disastrous, and it will be disastrous. And we see right now the deep state, they're pushing their agenda very, very hard to try to get a war. Now, Paul Craig Roberts is out there saying that the North Korean crisis is a Washington orchestration. Now, we know this. He said North Korea was last at war 1950 to 1953. North Korea has not attacked or invaded anyone in 64 years. North Korea lacks the military strength to attack any country, such as South Korea and Japan, and the U.S. protects South Korea. And China, well, they will not permit North Korea to start a war. So what is the demonization of North Korea by the deep state, by the central bankers, by the corporate media? Well, the Chinese government is not stupid. The Chinese leadership understands the reason for North Korean crisis is to provide cover for Washington to put an anti-ballistic missile site near China's border. And we have to remember, many times this is about many different agendas, not just one. And we know that the deep state, they've been trying for years to encircle China, put up these missile shields around Eastern Europe, around China, to protect the United States from a first strike type of an attack, where the United States launches nuclear weapons into these countries, and they use the missile shield to protect the nuclear weapons that are being fired from China and Russia. And we know that China and Russia, they have these nuclear missiles that can bob and weave, and they don't have a set trajectory. So if they do see the missile coming from one of these systems, they can bob and weave away from them. But this is their whole idea, and they really think that the United States will be protected by doing this. And this is what the deep state has been planning to do for a very long time. Now, Trump, on the other hand, is trying to cut them off. He's trying to bring China into the fold. He's trying to bring Duterte and the Philippines into the fold, cut the deep state off from encircling China, to bring those nations together where they're saying, you know something, let's work with China. Let's have drills with China. Let's use the South China Sea together. There are no problems here, and Duterte is leading this right now. And that's going to cut the deep state off from the encirclement of China. And they're still pushing this agenda right now. Now, we can see that Russia has done something very, very interesting. We know that there are peace talks coming up around June 1st. And this is the date that Cernovich said that there's going to be some type of military operation inside of Syria. And there is another report saying that this whole North Korean debacle, this fiasco that's going on with North Korea, is a distraction for troop buildup in Jordan ready to move into Syria. And this is by the deep state, by the intelligence agencies. But what Russia is doing right now is they're trying to counter this, first of all, by having these peace talks. Second of all, Russia, Iran, Turkey, Syria, they decided, and they sign an agreement that they will set up de-escalation zones. Now, we mentioned that before, where they're going to set up 4 different zones. And this is going to be in the Idlib province, Homs, eastern Ghouta, and in the south of Syria. Now, these zones are going to be controlled by Syria and Russia, not by the United States. The United States wanted safe zones or no-fly zones, but what Russia is doing is they're setting up their own zones where they're saying there will be no fighting in these areas. And they're using this to separate the terrorists from the moderate rebels. Very interesting strategy, because as we know, and as we've been following this for quite a while, this is what Russia wanted from the beginning. And we know under the Obama administration, with John Kerry, they said it would be too difficult to separate our paid mercenaries from our paid mercenaries because they're all the same. And Russia always wanted the United States to point out who are the moderate rebels. Well, with these zones, they're going to try to do it on their own. And Trump is with them on this. And this means that the U.S. is not going to control any of this, which means that Russia is trying to stop anything else from happening. Now, this is in the works right now. We also know that the deep state, well, they're not going to let this happen, because if they do, well, guess what? It is the end of the paid mercenaries. When I say the paid mercenaries, I'm talking about the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Al-Sham, the moderate rebels, because Russia and Syria will then control the country. They will split it into zones. There'll be nothing happening in those zones. They will split up the terrorists from the moderate rebels. They will find out that there's no such thing, or maybe there's just a few moderate rebels, and the whole thing is going to come to a screeching halt. The deep state doesn't want this to happen. So we can expect some type of an event. And it might be coming up very soon. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.